Welcome to Prescribing Prosperity with your hosts, John and Alex Soutsos from MedWealth Financial Services, operating through IPC Securities Corporation. In this podcast, we provide unique insights into wealth management, the psychology of financial decisions, and help listeners place the capital markets into perspective. Our aim is to help physicians, business owners, and other medical professionals to live their dream. Life is to live and enjoy, so we'll also cover health and lifestyle-related topics such as food, dining, travel, and unique experiences. Learn how global trends shape our investment strategy as we help you assemble your roadmap to prosperity.
Hello, and welcome to Prescribing Prosperity, the podcast hosted by John and Alex Soutsos. Gentlemen, good to see you again. It's always nice to be with you.
Likewise, Bill. Nice to see you, Bill.
Hope all's well.
Yeah, not too bad. Everything's going smoothly on our end. Busy as always, but no complaints.
Well, today I understand it's going to be a rather constructive podcast. And to help us out with that conversation is the guest, Adam Szewczyk. But Adam is a contractor and owner of 5B Construction. He is here this week to talk about the secrets of the construction trade and how it might relate in terms of getting things done and planning out what needs to be done. Adam, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
And with that introduction, I'm going to turn this over to John to let him start the conversation. John, Adam is all yours.
Hey, Adam. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, John.
Full disclosure, Adam just finished doing some major renovations in my house. So we have a little bit of a bias here.
So do I. It was a beautiful project.
Yes.
Well, that's good, though, John, because there are a lot of people who don't have friendly relations with their ex-contractors. So that's excellent.
Well, that's interesting. You should say that. Adam was referred to us through a mutual friend, John Orsini. And John's wife has a policy that none of her friends get to use John, so there are no hard feelings if things don't go the right way.
I have a similar policy amongst my friends as well.
Okay, that's problematic now, Adam. So now you're saying I'm not your friend.
Become friends.
Okay, all right. We hired Adam strictly for one reason, and he told me he was a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I thought, well, what more do you need as a qualifier for a contractor other than knowing that his heart is in the right place and he's clearly a rational and logical human being. So that's how it all began. Adam, tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you ended up with your own construction company.
I've been kind of through a lot of different jobs over the years, trying to find my niche. I actually graduated from Waterloo with the hopes to become a chartered accountant to follow in my father's footsteps. I found out very quickly that was not where my mind was and where my heart was. And I had several jobs as project managers. I've been a gymnastic coach. I've kind of done all kinds of things, but I've always had a knack for being handy. And I think it was actually a friend of mine who had a cottage up in Dorset area, and a tree fell across due to one winter storm, fell across the deck, broke it in half, and nobody knew how to fix it of his family, and they knew I was a little handy. They called me. I went up there, visualized it in my head, made a list, and we rebuilt it in a weekend with all of their help. And I just stepped back and said, this is what I'm meant to do, and started pursuing it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a good story. So you need to back up a little bit. You said gymnastics coach.
Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't heard that one before. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. I actually, I did gymnastics my whole life, right from when I was about 5 years old. I was actually a provincial level gymnast, never made it to nationals, but enjoyed the sport a lot. And as I got older, I left the competitive aspect and started to learn how to become a coach. and I ended up learning, taking coaching seminars, and becoming a provincial level women's gymnastic coach. And I did that for several years. You really do it for love of the game, because you're not going to get rich doing that. So.
Right. Right. So I take it you in your day performed the Iron Cross. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I did. That was probably about the height of my career, and I was able to do an Iron Cross for about a half a second, and that was about it. It's one of the harder strength moves to accomplish in your career.
I picture Vince Vaughn in Old School with the cigarette dangling from his lip doing the Iron Cross.
It's probably something like that.
So was that your only event, Adam, or did you have to?
No, I competed in all events. Floor, wow. Rings, parallel bars, high bar, vault. Yeah.
You must have been one strong guy in your heyday, and not to say that you're not now, but just I'm picturing.
It was a different type of strength. You could do 200 push-ups without batting an eye, but now it's hard to get up out of bed sometimes,
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? It's funny you mentioned being an accountant, because one of the things that I've admired about your work is that you're able to take a step back and manage it and think about it in broad terms and analyze the situation. You have a very analytical and rational mind, and that's not always the case with certain people when they get into this type of work. Is they know how to do the nuts and bolts of it. They know how to do the hands-on work. When it comes to actually managing the project, a lot of people tend to struggle with that big picture thinking. And so I think your background in accounting there was probably actually very formative and very helpful in preparing you for this type of work.
Well, I agree. Like it did give me I liked it. I enjoyed it, but not I would watch my father. I grew up, obviously he was a chartered accountant, and I grew up watching him, and he was giddy with numbers. Like he would almost sit there getting excited when he'd be sitting there doing all the books for somebody, and I didn't have that passion for it. So I look at it more of along the lines of, it's not that I couldn't do it, but I wouldn't have been happy doing it. And yeah, that I've always been a puzzle guy. I love sitting back, and I'll do 5,000 piece puzzles. My daughter and I'll sit there, and my wife just walks away and goes, I don't know what you guys are doing.
Fair.
That's incredible patience required to do something like that.
No kidding. So, Adam, did you do any sort of training or apprentice work in order to become a builder and a contractor, or you just kind of figured it out as you went along?
Well, a little bit of combination. So many of the trades, plumbers, electricians, and whatnot, they do require a certain level of school, an apprenticeship. There are bodies that regulate those industries, and you have to have a plumbing license, and you have to be apprentice for so long before you can become a master plumber. To be a general contractor, though, what I have done is figured out first the direction I wanted to go, and then I started working with people that I knew that were kind of in the industry looking for help. My stepfather actually did little house renovations, and so I kind of did some work with him until I figured this is all I can learn from you. And I moved on to the next person, and so on and so forth. I'm mostly self-taught in that what I still do to this day is I hire licensed, highly qualified professionals. And a lot of times I'll be on site and I'll just watch them. I'll ask questions and find out why they're doing something. Is it because of code? Is this the proper way of doing something? And then ultimately, in the end, after I gained all this knowledge, I actually went in the city of Hamilton, and it requires a knowledge of the Section 9 of the Ontario Building Code, and wrote their master contractor exam. So, and passed that and have my master contractor's license. So there's no degree that you require to be a general contractor. Obviously, you need to be licensed in the cities municipally that you're working. But other than that, it's hiring the right people that are all licensed in the fields that they're licensed in.
So you have to go get a license every time you work in a new city?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
Theoretically.
We can edit out the theoretically if you want, Adam.
There aren't too many, if any building inspectors are watching, there aren't too many people that actually go to get it in every single city that they work in.
That's fair.
Don't worry about the politicians. They have their own issues too that they're not enforcing.
I've never been asked to see it.
So exactly. Aside from special certifications, I think what a good contractor requires is one, common sense, and two, requires an understanding of people and being able to relate. And we experienced that with you, Adam. And clearly, common sense is something that's in short supply these days. And
it's not very common, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not very common at all. But Adam, just to shift gears on you a bit, none of us are eager to relive the experiences during the pandemic. But one of the areas that seemed to have thrived during that period was the home renovation industry. Did you notice an appreciable difference in the amount of business you did during and immediately following the pandemic?
I wouldn't say, I mean, immediately before, nobody kind of knew what was going on there. During, obviously, outside of the shutdowns, when we were allowed to work again, I found that people were calling, but you had a lot of hesitation from people. They were nervous to have people in their homes. It was a logistical nightmare. I didn't find that it was, there was a lot of major jobs, but a lot of small jobs. People were calling because they wanted their powder room redone, or they had an office that just needed a facelift with some new cabinetry or something small of that nature. I think it had to do a lot with the fact that people were home all the time now, right, sitting amongst these jobs and renos that they want to have done. You take for granted that you spend most of your waking hour at an office prior to the pandemic. You know, you get up in the morning, you go to an office, and you're away from the house, and you're only there in the evening. So a lot of things get put on the back burners. But that was the most of it. I didn't find people were looking to gut their houses or do major additions or anything of that nature, not immediately following the pandemic. And during, it was very sketchy with people. They were, like I said, very nervous to have people in their homes. And
when things opened up, what happened to your business demand?
So in recent last 2 years, everything has I found just exploded. Mostly, I'm going to say this was prior to very current with the current interest rate, the way interest rates have gone, and prices have kind of gone back up, and cost of living has gone back up. But prior to that, last 2 years, everybody, I think, gotten over the fact everybody is vaccinated, or those thoughts of and worries of the past are kind of in the past. And yeah, all the people have jobs and renos that they've wanted to have done. Maybe they've saved up the money for it. And it's kind of like everyone wants to pull the trigger all at once. Yeah.
and so you're running around trying to meet demand, and that's difficult. Tell me about the material costs before and after the pandemic.
I can use a sheet of plywood is my greatest example, just because it's something I use all the time. And before the pandemic, a sheet of plywood was like $36. During the pandemic, at its height, I think it was $108 a sheet. So it was like triple. Wow. I know that because I renovated my house at that time, and yeah, I paid triple for each building material. And then, and now it's come back down, but it's around 68, somewhere around that. So it's about double what it was, a little less, but it's not triple anymore. So
how about supply chains?
Supply chains, they did for a while there. You had extremely limited supply chains as the pandemic shut everything down. In order to get product back on shelves, many companies reduced the number of offerings. If they offered maybe 10 different products, they condensed it down to maybe 3 so that they could mass produce a lot of them. So you had less variety, but they were actually getting product back on shelves. Now I find that there's no issue. I mean, shelves are stocked. I don't find that there's much in the way of supply chain issues as much. You do get it here and there, but it wouldn't be pandemic related. It might be shipping or related, or depending on where it's coming from. I find the biggest problem today is quality. Quality control has gone down the toilet.
Really?
Yeah.
To what do you attribute that?
Quite honestly, just companies not getting maybe back up to full speed, because during the pandemic, I found that unnecessary jobs were cut for cost, possibly things like quality control. And again, to get product out after the pandemic, they were releasing a lot more and holding back less, because product was, you were waiting months and months for basic things that were always on shelves. Refrigerators, appliances, they were 9-month wait lists. Windows, I waited over a year to get Windows for a place.
Adam, have they banned gas stoves in Canada, or are they planning to?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, because we've been hearing this from the United States.
Yeah, I've heard that. Not that I'm aware of. As far as right now, everything is still available and still being produced. So,
that's good to know, because my wife's Italian, and if anyone comes near her gas stove, she's going to kill them.
I would agree with her, because if you've ever cooked on gas and you had to go to electric, even for the short term, it's a massive difference.
That's what I had to do. Sure. Moving from my parents' house to my house, I went from gas top to electric top, and it's a night and day difference in terms of the quality and how easy it is to cook. But anyway,
I mean, think about every single restaurant in the world. I mean, there's not an electric stove in any of them.
No.
Yeah, for sure. Adam, pandemic aside, one of the biggest issues affecting pricing appears to be the lack of skilled labor. Why do you think there's such a shortage of people who are able to do high quality trades work?
Well, a big problem was, again, going back to the pandemic, is the pandemic, I don't know if it forced, but it gave the opportunity or the will for a lot of people to retire. People just looked at it and said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to risk my health, or whatever the reasoning was. And a lot of the tradesmen, the quality ones, the ones that have had 30, 40, 50 years of experience, they all retired. They said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I had many sub trades that I had to find new sub trades to replace, due to the fact that they just said, I'm not doing this anymore. And since then, and due to when everything went back, there was this giant hole of sub trades. And what I found is that, a lot of the younger guys thought they could waltz in because they were in high demand, because everybody needed whatever trade it was. And they didn't have the years of experience that allowed them to cut their teeth and really understand their business. They may have been able to do a decent job, but they couldn't do that primo job.
Oh, so over the course of your career, have you seen a decline in the skilled labor force? One thing that comes to my mind are plasterers and the guys who would do the beautiful designs on ceilings in homes.
Certain skilled trades are harder to find, only because the general building industry doesn't use that style as often anymore. You don't find a lot of homes with a lot of intricate plaster work. You would have to be more into the restoration end of things, where you will get skilled guys, you will wait for them, and they will cost a lot. But there are fewer guys that know how to do that. And then again, there's not a big market for new people coming into the industry to learn that specific trade, because it takes years to master.
So is that, Adam, a function of the people who are constructing homes realize that there are limited numbers of people who can do that, have that skill, or the cost is too high and they've cognizantly decided, well, we don't want to pay that high cost and we're going to find a lower cost alternative?
Well, I mean, new subdivisions, you typically get what's considered builder grade to start, right? You go in and say, here's your finishes. And even then, you're going to get MDF finishes. Maybe you're going to get some wood trim. You're going to get basic hollow core doors. Usually you're upgrading to things like solid core doors or solid wood trims and casements. Those things, the building materials are still used today, but you're not going to get an upgrade to plaster moldings. They just aren't offered. It's very expensive. Usually you will see that type of product in custom homes. So if you're building a one of, you're very much going into the unique, I want this to look a certain way, and here's the product I want to use. And when that's the case, we find the right company and or tradesman that is able to do that. And like I said, they're out there. There's just not as many of them because, I mean, who can do a lath and plaster wall anymore, right? That's just a dead technology in the world of home building. So nobody knows how to do it. And that used to be an art. I mean, right. I've seen plaster. I've had a plaster worker that had to fix an old plaster ceiling, and the thing looked like a piece of paper. It was perfect. And I was so impressed by it, and it looked 1,000 times better than drywall. But the cost of having him repair that thing was massive. Right. But it was original to the house. The homeowner was extremely happy when we were done.
Nice. Good. That's great. And it is tough because so much of it is driven by cost nowadays. And like you said, unless it's a custom job, everybody's it's a race to the bottom when it comes to the various home builders sometimes in order to try and, quote the most competitive price possible for a project.
It can be.
Yeah. And so, moving into specifically home renovations, I've got two friends of mine who are either done or in the process of completely redoing their homes. From top to bottom. One did it himself. One contracted out all of it to a number of different people. And so, you see I've seen at least the difference in speed, obviously, that comes with doing it yourself versus having it contracted out. But with fewer professional options available, or like I said, cost potentially prohibiting a lot of people from hiring professional workers, it seems like we've seen a major increase in the number of do-it-yourselfers. In your opinion, what are the types of jobs that the average person can do themselves versus having to necessarily bring out a contractor or a tradesman to do a particular job?
Well, I mean, DIY projects really should be things that don't require, I think this should go without saying, but things that don't require a license. Definitely, you shouldn't be doing anything structural. You shouldn't be doing any kind of gas work. You are actually legally allowed as a homeowner to do your own electrical work because the Electrical Safety Authority or the ESA, as long as you call them to inspect your work, they will put a sticker on it and pass it for you. Okay. They wouldn't do that for me. I'm a contractor, and if I did the work for you, I'm not allowed. I have to be a licensed contractor. Right. But for my own home, I could do all my own electrical work as long as I get it inspected. Plumbing, it falls under the Ontario Building Code. So if you are to replumb your house, that would require a plumbing contractor.
Okay.
But, if you want to go in and change your trim, put up some drywall, put down flooring, change out some cabinets, these are all projects a do-it-yourselfer can do. None of them require any kind of special permits. None of them require any structural drawings or knowledge of anything of that nature.
Okay. And so, with that being the case, obviously people can do some of those projects. What are some of the projects that you would warn people against amongst the ones that you can do? One of the ones that they should be avoiding at all costs because they might make a mistake or might end up making things more difficult.
Well, like I said, the biggest ones that I always warn people, I mean, unless you know what you're doing, you shouldn't be touching your electrical. Okay. It's just too easy to have something short out and cause a fire. If you screw up on your plumbing, you can actually do massive amounts of damage to your home, because if you have a tap on the second or third floor and it's leaking and you go away for the weekend and you come back, that water will keep going down through every floor, ruining all the floors, the ceilings. You could end up with tens of thousands of dollars in water damage.
Right.
just because you didn't do it correctly. They're not hard projects, but it's something that you really just should know what you're doing. Too often I see what I call hodgepodge jobs where somebody said, oh, this was leaking. So they took some, electrical tape and wrapped it around 14 times and it held. So they were fine with it. But then when it fails big.
Sorry to interject, but in speaking to my home insurance company recently, they said that water damage is the most often cited claim for homeowners, and it's the biggest cost to the insurance companies.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that. Electrical, most people don't touch electrical work, and modern day electrical appliances and everything, and our breaker system, it's designed to protect you and not arc and create a fire. It's more and more rare to have an electrical fire in a home. But water is water. If you leave your tap running or a tub fills up and spills over, most of it I find is almost all water damage that I ever go into a home and repair is from a leaking toilet or a leaking shower. And people don't know about it until it comes through the ceiling.
And so when people do go ahead and do their own plumbing work, what my question is, how do they get caught? Like, does a home inspector have to come through, or is it not until you've sold the house realistically and the buyer's bringing in an inspector? Like, how does that, how do you remedy that issue? Because obviously there's nothing to really stop somebody from saying, I'm just going to do my own plumbing work. I'm going to go grab some PVC pipes down at the hardware store and stick them in.
Well, ultimately, so let's say you decided to do your own plumbing work and it leaked and you put a claim in with the insurance. The insurance is going to come out and inspect it and they're going to look at it and say, well, this wasn't done by a professional. Okay. And so you're not covered. If you go to sell a home and somebody sees it, I've done some home inspections for friends before. And if I see something like that, I'm going to give them a big red flag and be like, hey, this doesn't look like it was done by a professional. So unless they can produce something that says that it was, I would be very wary of it. But I mean, unless you can catch something and prove it, I've only had one instance where I've caught a major building problem, and the homeowner was actually able to go back to the seller and recoup the cost of repairing the job.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big job. It was a structural foundation job.
Jesus. Well, that's great that you were able to help them and avoid that cost, but also on the other hand, miraculous that they were able to recover that cost, because that can be difficult to do, especially ex post like that if you've already entered into the sale agreement or purchase agreement. So, what are some of the common mistakes you see people make when they're trying to do a home renovation project themselves? So, you talked a little bit about the electrical. What else do you see them do that obviously is a common mistake that they make?
Well, it depends on what you quantify as mistake, because to me, installing trim the wrong way is a mistake. But most of the mistakes that a DIYer will do that a contractor in theory would not are just using the wrong product to make the installation. So I've seen doors installed with big heavy screws that putty put over them instead of brad nails. I've seen flooring not glued down properly or not installed with expansion gaps. I've seen bad tile jobbing. You name it, I've seen it. It's usually, though, it's not installed correctly. So they kind of knew enough to, I got to do this to make this happen, but they didn't know 100% of the knowledge to install it correctly so it won't fall apart and it looks professional and solid.
Right. So how much are you really saving when you do a project yourself?
Well, that depends on your skill level. It depends on your, I have a friend who's very handy guy. He works in an office and he does little home renovation projects on his weekends. He loves doing it like a hobby and he's quite good at it. And I've gone into his house and I'll give him a few tips and, hey, you should make sure you look at this or do it like that. And he go, thanks a lot. And so he's not 100%, but he's pretty good enough for the average bear. But most people, I don't think you're saving very much. when you're done, you're going to sit back and you're going to look at it, and you might think it looks okay, but you're going to know where all the mistakes are. You're not going to look back at it and say that's a beautiful thing, and I'm happy with it. And everyone that comes in is going to go, wow, what a great job you did. Having a professional do it, although it costs more up front, you're going to have no stress, because doing it yourself can just destroy you mentally if you don't know what you're doing. I've seen people with projects that have taken years to do because they just can't get it right. They don't want to do it. They gave up on it, and now it just sits there. So you got a mental stress component, and then you've got just the finished product you've got to live with. And if you also have to redo it, sorry to interrupt. If you have to redo it, you're having to pay a contractor then anyways. So you've got all the cost of what you did, and now you got to pay a contractor to come in and fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think one of the things that people factor in is the cost of their time. So,
No.
And it's you funny, you mentioned, can take years. So my buddy, the one who did it himself, has been working on it for 3 years now, is still not done. He's almost done, but he's still not there yet. And I can tell you from my experience talking to him and seeing him go through it, there was a lot of mental stress that's gone on him. And he's talked about, been certain nights when he's sitting there laying in bed trying to think about how he's going to do a project, because he's trying to piece it together in his mind, and it's not as seamless as just going out there and doing it, or as simple as sometimes it may seem to be watching a YouTube video. And there's also the mental stress of the time that he's put into it. He's got now a second child on the way. First one is just turned a year old a couple of weeks ago, and he's working full time at the same time, and so he's got all of these other things going on in his life, in addition to trying to figure out how to and then executing a home renovation. And he articulated exactly what you said, which is I walk into his house and I think this looks incredible. Like that, the fact that you did this yourself is impressive. And he goes to me, I hate this house. I can't wait till I'm done so I can sell it, because I don't want to live here. I hate looking at all the mistakes that I made. I know where everything was done wrong, where I cut corners, and he really does not love the project as much as I think did at the beginning of it. So.
Well, at the beginning, I think it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great, and you have all this enthusiasm. The second you get into it, and you said a key word there, he knows where he cut corners.
Yeah.
And that's something that a contractor shouldn't be doing, right?
Yes, for sure. As I mentioned, Adam, one of the reasons people choose to do the renovations themselves is to save money. I know it can vary significantly based on how you choose to finish the room, but what would the ballpark range be for cost or price when it comes to doing a typical bathroom renovation, starting with just a simple 2-piece powder room?
A lot of it's going to depend on the person themselves, because obviously when you renovate something, you're going to try and upgrade something. Some people renovate because it's broken. Maybe the tiles are all cracked and need to be replaced. And they look at it and say, well, if I'm going to replace a tile, I got to pull the toilet. Is the toilet new, or is it really, really old? Should I replace the toilet? There's a lot of decisions that have to be made there. But hypothetically, a 2-piece powder room, I mean, if you're doing just a basic facelift with entry-level building materials, I mean, it might cost you $8,000. I mean, again, a toilet these days isn't $200 anymore. It's a good entry-level toilet, $600.
Right.
A vanity isn't $800 anymore. They're $1,200. So you got to take into account all the price increases that have happened recently. Right. And then people's time is worth a lot more today than it was 5 years ago.
And then flooring on top of that as well.
Well, again, you used to be able to go to a tile store, a nice high-end tile store, and they would always have their discontinued end. So you could get some super expensive tile at a massive discount, which was really, really nice for small projects, because usually there was not enough to do a whole house in. But hey, here's a bathroom, great, and you could spend like $1 or $2 a square foot. It's not as much the case anymore. Right. Now it's, you might be spending $20 or $30 a square foot just for tile.
Right.
So, and again, the sky is always the limit. I tell people, like I've done small little powder room renos where, again, it's just quick facelift, not very expensive, but at the same time, you could spend $100,000 putting TVs in your mirrors and speakers in your lights, and
Adam, he's
all
right there. You can't mention the stuff that he's asked you for.
Bill, did you get that $8,000 for an entry level two-piece powder room?
I'm sitting here being very skeptical of that price.
Bill, I saw you choking on something.
Well,
sticker shock, eh, Bill?
No, you know what? Unfortunately, my daughter needed to have they're having to have their bathroom redone, and it's not a simple two-piece vanity. And they got quotes in the neighborhood of $20,000 and $30,000 to redo their bathroom.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here thinking, I don't believe that $8,000 number.
Well, again, that's like, I base that on something like you got a 5x5 room, so there's 25 square feet, right? If you could find a bucket tile, in theory, your material cost is $25 for that tile, right?
Mm-hmm.
A buck a square foot.
Right.
A toilet, $600. A vanity at then $1,200. You might spend $3,000 in material, and a little two-piece. If you're just pulling the floor of the vanity in the toilet, throw a lick of paint on, and put the fixtures back exactly where they are with no plumbing work, no electrical work, no major changes to anything. It should be a 1-week job for like one guy.
Yeah.
Right. And then obviously once you start
either
touching...
that, or maybe I'm charging too little.
Yeah, there you go. You're a bargain contractor.
Adam, it's that your description of that last one sounded like a lick and a prayer.
Yeah. Well, and then you get into the embedded TVs and the mirrors, like somebody wanted, and that could be $8,000 right there.
Yeah, it's $10,000 just without batting an eye, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it depends on, like you said, what you want to make of the project itself. So what about when we get into like a 3 or a 4-piece bathroom? Your standard master bath, or a second bathroom in the house where you've got multiple fixtures. It's a little bit larger. Are we talking at that point the average price going to be somewhere in the 20 to 30 range?
This is where something like a master bathroom, I would always suggest like something like adding a heated floor. Heated floors are one of those things where it's much more common today to be putting heated floors in places. The technology is a lot greater. It's easier to do. It's not cheap, but the added value of walking across the floor in the winter in your bare feet and having no change in temperature or a very comfortable floor when you get out of the shower, it's one of those things you don't think about. Mm-hmm. But if I took it away from you, you would notice it the very next day.
I absolutely. So, Adam, it's funny you mention that. Whenever I walk into the bathroom here that you've been working on, I think, oh, this is really nice. And then I go and I walk into one of the other washrooms, because that's the one that I use when I work over here. And you feel the difference. You feel how cold and hard the tile is. Whereas in the other one, it feels like you're walking on the beach. Like it's warm and luxurious, and it's incredible.
Yep. And then other things like, again, we've done a lot of custom glass there because it's given a beautiful look to something with minimal obstruction. Custom vanities are a lot more expensive. Obviously, time you put the word custom into something, people immediately tighten up a little bit and go, okay, how much is this going to cost? And again, but you got to remember that the master bath for the homeowner is their bathroom. Typically, it's not the shared one. It's not usually a common one. It's where you want to enjoy your space. So to make it your own is always a smart idea. I don't think you're losing money on it. You're going to get the enjoyment out of it. But yeah, a master bath with custom fixtures and everything, you're up over $50,000 easy without batting an eye.
Right.
In today's prices. And again, as I've sent a lot of my clients, including yourselves, to places that like boutiques to look at fixtures and bathtubs. Again, you can spend $1,000 on a bathtub and you can spend $10,000 on a bathtub.
Yeah.
It functions the same.
Yes.
It holds water. It holds you.
and some other stuff.
And maybe a few other things. But ultimately, how much are you going to enjoy it for your budget? And I tell people, look, you got to do a little research and a little shopping around, find the product that you're happy with, and I'll put it in.
Right. Now we'll get to the mother load. the big project that a lot of people end up doing, and that's the kitchen. That one tends to be the moneymaker. So tell us, for a typical kitchen renovation, what should somebody expect when it comes to both cost and timeline?
So again, the biggest thing that I warn people about kitchens is with bathrooms, unless you're in a smaller home, a lot of houses have an extra bathroom, whether it's a spare bedroom, a common bathroom off the hall, or maybe even just a two-piece powder room. There is another facility to use. There's only one kitchen typically in a house. I've not been in too many homes with, I mean, unless I go back to some of my past girlfriends who were Italian, and
I was going to say typical Italian home.
The Italian home with the basement kitchen all the time. But that's not always the case. And when you're losing your kitchen, it's extremely disruptive to people. Yeah. So that number right off the bat, you have to be really ready and prepared for that reno. A lot of times, because of the time delays in things like countertops versus cabinetry and then plumbing, I will hook up temporary stuff for people. I've even moved kitchens into another dining room for people before and set up a temporary little mini kitchen while we gutted the main kitchen. And then we had to fix that room.
Yeah,
but it was a whole floor renovation, so it was kind of okay. However, it's just again, kitchen cabinetry. If you go to IKEA, you can get kitchen cabinetry for $250 a cabinet. Now, someone has to still put that together and install it, and it is an IKEA level kitchen, which might be fine for apartments or condos or stuff like that. But if you're doing a massive renovation and you want a nice kitchen, you're going to get a cabinet maker to make your cabinetry. And the kitchen cabinets alone can run you between, again, I couldn't give you an exact per linear foot, but an average kitchen might run you $50,000 just for the cabinets. And not unheard of.
For sure. And when it comes to the something like the cabinets, do you notice a material difference in the quality if you go with a custom cabinet versus an IKEA?
Yeah, very much so. Cabinetry and millwork companies, you very much do, in theory, get what you pay for, because a custom millwork will be typically a solid plywood box, like a maple or a breech veneer plywood interior boxes with either a paint grade hardwood or a solid MDF paneling that's sprayed. I've even had stained doors done, so they're obviously of a maple or different wood species variety. The construction is night and day. Just if you were to just see them on the shelf, you would understand how heavy a custom made cabinet is, and therefore you've got a heavier hardware. Right. It's going to last you infinitely longer.
Yeah, durability I found was an issue with some of the particle board, if you will, like cabinetry, because at my parents' house here, we had shelves that have collapsed or fallen right out because you get a whole bunch of mugs and plates, and
they warp, they start to bend and flex, and where cabinets, even shelves, drawers made from a mill worker, they're going to be of a plywood construction. Like I said, it's probably more likely a beech veneer or a birch veneer plywood. The strength is going to be unmatched. You're also able to repair things of a higher quality nature more than you can repair a particle board. Particle board is going to have some sort of a skin on it, right? Whether it's a plastic or a foil
it's a wrap,
wrap,
essentially. Yeah,
exactly. You can paint that. It's not going to be the same as painting wood. No. If you have a solid wood door and you want to change its color, a painter can come in and they can sand it down, respray it, and it's a brand new door.
Yeah. To say nothing of the customizations that you can gain by going with a custom cabinet maker, because of the fact that they can create things that are more functional, create designs that are more functional than what you're going to get at your standard IKEA. But anyway, that's not to poo-poo those people who are looking for just the cost-saving option. It's
I
just
have an
you.
IKEA kitchen in my house. It was cost effective for the time. We went with the higher grade drawer faces and doors. And I've been surprised at its durability. I know where it's softer in certain areas, and there's areas that I would strengthen a little bit. And again, I have the ability to maybe add a little customization to it. But I've been happy with it. It's less about the quality is good enough if it's installed correctly, but I know that I'm not going to have the longevity of that kitchen that I would with a custom made kitchen.
Right. That over to you.
Well, I think we covered the subject as to how people can cut back on some expenses. So on the subject of home renovations and choosing the rooms and the areas that would add the most value to the home, what are the projects that have a multiplier effect on the value of a house? For, let's say, Adam, for every $1 spent on the project, will it add $3 in value or something to that effect?
Well, I'm not a real estate agent, so but from what I understand, and what I find is bathrooms and kitchens being, although they are the most expensive rooms in the house, I think for possibly that reason, that if somebody else has already upgraded it for you, you're willing to pay more for the house. Because bathroom and kitchen renovations, not only are they most expensive, they're the most disruptive to your daily life.
Okay. Right. So what are the areas you most often see people getting carried away with and spending more money unnecessarily?
Well, unnecessary spending really, it's kind of a personal whether or not you like that, right? I had somebody wanting a new hardwood floor, and they chose a walnut. It was a beautiful floor, was it cherry? It was a species that was not as common to have on hardwood floor. It was very nice, but it was very soft. And he had kids, and I said to him, this floor is going to get marked up and dinged and scratched very easily. It's not as durable as other species of wood. But that's what they wanted, and we put it down for them. And it was probably 3 times more expensive just for the material than a similar species to give a similar appearance.
Right.
So in that respect, I kind of looked at it and thought to myself, I think you're being foolish with what you're purchasing here.
Yeah. And another one that comes to mind for me, and sorry to interject here, Dad, was there's a house, if you look it up, it's on Dalton Road in Mississauga. And this house is very unique. It looks like something that a Bond villain would live in. Like, I'm talking, the inside of it is designed with a lot of stone, and it kind of looks like you're living in a cave, and you're trying to hide out from all the civilization because you're plotting against them. Not to say that that's what the owners who live there were doing, but that's just kind of what it looks like.
Now we know where the bomb shelter is in Mississauga.
Yeah,
but the point being, when I looked at the listing, just out of curiosity, because I wanted to see what they were listing it for, in the listing itself, first of all, compared to the other homes in the area, it was at a depressed value, and the realtor had gone in and listed the house as already approved for reconstruction. They've already received approval for reconstruction. I assume on the basis of nobody, it's such a specific taste that they've gone and they've implemented in that home. You're very unlikely to find somebody who has the financial wherewithal to be able to purchase it on that piece of real estate, because that's the most expensive street in the city, but also to then want to have the same tastes to be able to say, I want that house as is condition. Like that, to me, I mean, if you have enough money that it doesn't matter, I suppose that's your choice. But to me, if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, that's not going to give you a whole lot of bang for your buck to do a home like that, because you're going to enjoy it. You may love it, but at the end of the day, when it comes time to turn around and sell it, you're going to be hamstrung by your choices in terms of your market that you're going to be selling to.
Well, yeah. I mean, you are going to what you would call a poor renovation, really, you're the only one who's gained value out of that, and nobody else is going to like that take on something, or the market is so small, you're limiting buyers. I mean, you see TV shows with these unique homes all the time where there may be it's an engineering marvel, but I saw one house out in like California that rotated. And it's like, how many people want a rotating house? You know,
Exactly.
It sounds super cool, and but
I
from
don't
a
know.
practicality standpoint, like
Adam, to me, that reminds me of the beds from the 70s that you see from the old movies, where it's just a circular
rotating
bed that
around.
rotated with a mirror on the ceiling, and
Yeah, that's it.
that's a very specific choice.
But
So-
that's just, that would be a perfect example of, in my opinion, poorly spending your money. But at the same time, I've never not put something in for somebody because they wanted to spend the money. It's your home in the end, and if this is what you want, I'm happy for you.
Okay. That's
So,
good.
so Adam, you're saying it's actually possible to do an upgrade that reduces the value of a home?
Absolutely. I think the most renovations obviously add value to the home. However, if you've ever, for example, like you mentioned, you can just drive by some houses and it doesn't fit with the neighborhood. So again, you're not going to get probably the full value out of that home that maybe your neighbors can get because your market is smaller.
It's interesting you mentioned, sorry to interrupt you. It's interesting you mentioned that because we live in an upscale neighborhood and the homes in this area are running in several $1 million, but there's a street in the neighborhood where someone took a home that was only constructed 25 years ago, just brought it down to its foundation, rebuilt it with this ultra contemporary design. It's beautiful, but it completely does not fit in with the rest of the neighborhood. And they've priced it at an 80% premium to what the houses, to what their neighbors' home values are. Does that make sense? Are these people ever going to get their money out of it?
I mean, if real estate, as my understanding, is never a bad investment as long as you can sit on it long enough. And if they're going to live there their entire lives, that as the neighborhood ages, people may look at it and go, oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll buy the house 3 doors down and do the same thing. And you would change the neighborhood's feel. I don't see that first person, though. As I've understood it also, you never want to be the first person and you never want to be the last person. The first person never gets their money back, and the last person always overpays for everything and can't get their money out of it. So when things like that start happening, I don't see that person getting any value out of it. Maybe they can recoup over time their cost, but that would be due to inflation and general price increases. I renovated my home just over the pandemic, and we specifically left the original shell of the house so as to not disrupt the look. It's a completely brand new house on the inside.
Right.
And we added an addition to the back and to the top, but I purposely kept the complete profile of the original house to keep in with the neighborhood. And we loved it. I mean, it's a unique house that's over 100 years old. I mean,
wow.
There's certain character there that you can't build anymore.
That's right. That's right. What are some of the most common mistakes you see people making in their home renovation, whether it be design mistakes or material selection?
Well, I think the biggest mistake people make is not spending the money in the right places. As a contractor, I am less interested in what you want it to look like, and I am much more interested in spending the money to make sure the things you can't see are rock solid, high end, and will not fail or lose function. Things like the waterproofing materials behind a shower. People, any shower that was built in the 80s or even in the 90s, they're typically a rubber membrane with a concrete base that creates the slope. Those rubber membranes have a lifespan and they rot out, and then that's where you get leaking. The materials, more modern materials today that you see, usually made by Schluter. I think there's a couple other brands that make them, and that's like orange fabric material. That's a waterproof membrane that sits just below the tile, as opposed to having concrete on top of it. Remember, concrete is porous and holds water. So in essence, those old showers, once you take a shower, the concrete gets wet, it never dries out. Wow. So that membrane is always sitting in a puddle of water, which is what rots it over time. That's where if you can prevent the water from getting to something, that's always better. It's a similar concept to the outside waterproofing on your foundation. They used to just spray a light tar and put the backfill in, and now they're more common to find heavier waterproofing membranes with protection boards and ways to prevent water from penetrating that foundation.
So this is why the powder room is $8,000, because you're not just going to rip off old tiles and stick new ones back on. You have to take it right back to the studs and redo the whole thing from scratch.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, with a basic powder room, you're gonna tear up the tile, but instead of the sub membranes to put tile down, like a scratch coat, which is the older style where they put a metal mesh and pour concrete and then tile on top of that. That still works just fine today. But you don't have to worry about, in a powder room, waterproofing. You don't have to worry about seals and gaskets, unless you want to put a heated floor in which case I would say yes, by all means, put a heated floor in a powder room. It'd be an upgrade. Again, if you're not touching any of the plumbing and electrical really hasn't changed very much, and it's in really good condition. But if I was going to go into an older home and do a powder room renovation, I would look at what the walls are made out of and say, like, hey, you have old plaster walls here. When we tear this off, these are going to crack. We can go a step further and strip it all out, put new drywall back, or we could just skin the plaster and try and do our best at repairing. All of these things have obviously different values associated with them, but they also have different lifespans associated with them.
Right. Moving from the inside of the house to the outside of the house, everyone talks about the curb appeal of a house. What are some of the most cost-efficient upgrades people can make on the outside to really boost the value of their home?
On the outside of a house, I would honestly find that most people have overgrown gardens. I find that people like to see homes and don't want to feel cluttered. And simply having a gardener clean up bushes and cut things back and keeping it looking nice on the front of a house, that's a big upgrade. It's not a cost-effective one, or sorry, it is a very cost-effective one. Lighting is another one. Especially how most houses don't have a lot of light on the outside of them. And if it's not too invasive, soffit lighting can add great curb appeal. If you have light fixtures on the outside of the house, making sure that they operate and they are of a style that matches the house. And as you pointed out, having something overly contemporary in a non-contemporary area wouldn't add as much value. Outside of that, and there's not a lot you can do other than making sure your eaves troughs are kept in good working order so they're not clogged and spilling out crap all over the place, and stuff like that.
So what you're saying, Adam, is when you come back to my house, you're going to light it up like the Parthenon.
Well, we're getting to that point there. We've got lighting to look at, and
Okay. So when selling a home, is it better to renovate first and then sell, or is it better to sell as it is so that there's a blank canvas for the buyer to choose the finishings that they want?
That's a hard one. I would say that I think it really depends on the condition of the home. You wouldn't hang a new chandelier in a haunted house to try and sell it. You
might hang an old chandelier in a haunted house.
If the house is at a certain dilapidation point or wear or age. I've gone in and seen houses for sale, and it was the little old lady that has lived there her entire right from a childhood, It was the family home, and she still lived there, and nothing has been changed. Carpets are original. Yeah, exactly. Very much so. You get the avocado.
You walk in and it's 1940.
Yeah, you get the avocado and flowered wallpaper and the yellow paint on the walls, and those houses, don't renovate them. Somebody is looking to walk in and gut the whole place. Right. If you have a house that's maybe only 20 years old and you say, you know what, it hasn't been updated and we want to sell, then yeah, updating, maybe just changing out the kitchen cabinetry, just the drawer faces, right? The cabinet boxes might be in decent shape, but you can get new drawers and doors made for a kitchen, maybe put a new countertop in, do some small renovations of that nature, would really punch a house up and make it feel a lot more modern and newer than it is. So,
yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, Adam. The part of the reason why I've discussed this at length with my parents is because one of our neighbors across the street, our former neighbors, she had renovated her home. Not a major renovation, but they had done some renovations to try and modernize the home because it was 20 odd years old at the time that she sold it. And then the person she ended up selling it to ended up ripping it down to the studs anyway and putting in their own vision. And so I've always wondered, after the fact, was it really worth it for them? They spent all that money to renovate it, change it, and it seems like a waste of materials for them to put it in and only last not even 6 months, and it got tossed.
It might depend on how much they spent versus how much they would have got without those, right?
True.
You never know who the buyer is going to be. I mean, a younger couple looking for their first home, they won't have the budget to do any renos. So they're going to be walking around going, how do we get a functional home for at least the next 5 to 10 years before we're going to be selling or renovating or upgrading? Right. Versus, a developer that's going to come in and go, I don't care what you do. This house could be 10 years old and we're going to take it down and put up an ultra modern contemporary house, right?
Exactly. So clearly home renovations and home building mistakes are not limited to amateurs. Lots of professionals make mistakes as well. What are some of the common mistakes that you see made by professionals when it comes to building a home, whether it be a new home or whether it be an entire development or independent contractor? What are some of the common things that you see or that you look for when you're walking through a house?
Well, new homes have much better warranties than older homes, obviously. New big home builders will give you a certain time period to have things fixed. From my experience, not to name anything, I have seen a lot of corners cut on big developments, things like building in the winter and leaving ice and snow within the structure while it's being built, and then the house is heated and you have the ice melt, you have gaps in the framing, you have water dripping down from the roof area because the snow drifts are now melting into the home. They're probably not going to rip down the house to fix those major components. They're more likely to just shore it up and paint over it. I've seen from smaller contractors, it's usually a lack of knowledge. I'll go in and have a client call me and say, you were recommended to me by, so-and-so. And because I had this wall taken out 2 years ago and a beam put in and the drywall around it's cracking, and that, and you look into that, and I found that they didn't put the beam in properly. They didn't point load it properly. Whether it was a willing disregard for proper building techniques to save a dollar, or whether they just didn't have the knowledge of how to properly install a point load beam and have structural drawings made. These are not, I wouldn't say mistakes are, I think mistakes are done inadvertently, and the only way I could see that happening is you don't have the knowledge and you didn't know any better.
Yeah, like to me, the one thing that comes to mind, and you and I have talked about this before, is with new home builders. A lot of times, because it's a volume project that they're working on, they're trying to do 15, 20 homes at a time. And obviously, as you and I discussed, a lot of the work is subcontracted out. It's not, we'll strap a name to it just for the sake of it, Mattamy Homes. It's not necessarily the Mattamy Homes build team. It's Mattamy Homes subcontracted out to whichever team. And if they haven't properly vetted the team, or the team itself isn't really motivated or incentivized to provide particular care, and this again is not to call out Mattamy Homes, I'm just using them as an example, but if they're not incentivized to make sure that it is done properly on each and every home, and their focus is just getting as many homes done as possible because they've got 20 to do and they're in a rush to get them all done quickly, then it seems like it's more it would be more common for them to make mistakes and cut corners when it comes to a home project.
Yeah. So again, I wouldn't call it making a mistake, but cutting corners is definitely something through my years that I have heard stories of. I've seen myself. I've heard stories of framing guys that would the code requires on a 2x4 framed wall to have, or rather a 2x6 wall to have 3 nails in the bottom, or you have to toe nail it 2 from either side. The bottom being 3 nails, the guy would say only put 2. They would save 1 nail per stud, but that might equal a box of nails at the end of the job, which they were responsible for. And I'm sitting there going,
how much is a box of nails?
Well, that's just it. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how cheap can you be? And, but that's the type of stuff I've seen. Like I said, so I was working, helping my tile setter in the winter, and, across the street, I'm watching the framers shovel off the snow from the floor joists, and there's ice everywhere, and they just knocked the snow off, put the plywood down, and nailed it. And I'm thinking to myself, when that ice melts, you're going to have a gap in between your subfloor and your floor joist. One, it means you didn't glue it.
Mm-hmm.
It means it's only nailed. And when that wedge is there, you're going to wonder why you walk across that floor and it squeaks.
Right.
Because there's movement, right? That shouldn't be there. And I don't know if they don't get enough complaints, or whether it's within a certain tolerance, whether they go through and then they got somebody, when it warms up, walking through with screws trying to get rid of the squeaks. Is it necessary? In the interest of speed to them, maybe that's acceptable.
Right.
In the way I see it, I'd rather take longer to do something, but when I do it, it never comes apart. Right. It's there for life is the way I try and build things. So,
as it should be. So, with that in mind, in your opinion, is it better to buy an older home and renovate rather than buy a new build?
I think it's the personality of the person. Right. An older home has some beautiful character, but it also has a lot of its own innate problems. Older homes tend to have uneven floors due to just age and time and settling of the house. Like I renovated my home. I use it as an example only because it's 100 years old. It was about 2 inches out of level from the center to the outside walls because over 100 years of sinking and settling and different building materials. Some of the floors looked like Swiss cheese from where people had been DIYers over the years and made lots of holes in the floor joists. I gutted it completely out and replaced everything so that it would be level again on new footings to make it solid. But it kept the outside. So if you walk into my home, it looks like a brand new house, but on the outside, it has that character.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to lose that character of the house. So, versus a very ultra contemporary home where people might want their bedroom wall to be floor to ceiling glass, wall to wall with electronic blinds or something of that nature. You're not going to get that in my home. It's just one, there's nowhere to put it. It's not designed for it.
Mm-hmm.
So really it's a personal taste as to what you want to live in.
Mm-hmm. Well, just to before we move on here, I have one follow-up to that would be, in order to avoid some of these issues, what should people be looking for when they're hiring a high-quality contractor or construction company?
Well, the biggest thing that I would say is, number one, if you're a homeowner and you're looking for a contractor to do renovations, right off the bat, if you know somebody that's had renovations done, ask them if they like their contractor. Word of mouth is by far the greatest seller of anything, because you trust your friends' opinions. If they say this is the guy to use, you're more likely to go with them. And they're likely to have a good reputation. You can ask around. If you're not sure, go see projects they've done. Don't just look at pictures, because I can pull 100,000 pictures of houses off the internet to show you, you know, and say, oh yeah, look at this house that I did. Talk to people if you're not sure. Ask about the reputation and how they worked and whether they like them or not. For a big home builder, I really don't have an opinion on. I mean, they all have a great sales team, so they're all going to seem like the greatest builders in the world. Again, I would just tell everybody to do your own research.
Yeah. So obviously we've seen style trends evolve over time. What are some of the current trends that you're seeing in homes today?
Big trends that I find now are a lot of contemporary on the inside of homes. People are getting away from very ornate trims and casements and patterns, and I'm doing a lot of white. Very neutral, very light colors, nothing very super bold. That's the other thing I would find is people are trying to stick with the look of their home. So I do renovate some older homes, and we are tearing out a lot of the mismatched baseboards and casements and putting in something that would be more close to the period of the home, but all new, so that you're eliminating all of that, all those cracks and unevenness and parts that have fallen off over the years. So it looks the way it should.
So what are some of the cooler projects that you've gotten to working on, or things that you've seen done in homes that after it was done really stood out to you as like, wow, that was a major upgrade. That turned out really nice.
Well, I put a lot of my own personality and or rather my own heart into every project I do. So I really try to, if I wouldn't do it in my house, I wouldn't do it for a client. So each project is kind of personal, even if it's just a standard bathroom renovation. However, some of the cooler things, a lot of the cooler stuff has kind of been more recent, but the first project I think I ever did, going back to that deck that kind of said to myself, this is what I want to do. I mean, it's a lake access cottage. We went there with nothing, and I was kind of surprised. My friends are like, oh yeah, by the way, we need to rebuild this deck and we need your help. And here I'm standing here now, you got me. And, just standing there with nothing and just building it in my head and hauling the lumber across a lake and saying at the end of the day, it's a done project and everyone was enjoying it. I mean, that to me is the epitome of what I do, is just seeing my clients love what I do for them and seeing them enjoy it, because nothing would hurt me more than to finish a project and have a client say, I'm really not happy with this. Right.
One of the coolest ones I ever saw was a friend of mine. His parents put in a wine cellar in their basement, and this thing is temperature controlled to the point where the second you walk in, the air conditioning kicks on in order to counteract the heat that your body is giving off, so as not to disturb the wine. Like, to me, something like that is phenomenal, and it will always stand out in my mind as something that's really, really unique. But something that's also unique to cooler climates and specific to Canada is heated driveways. And so, as I understand it, there's basically two different mechanisms for doing it. One is to run a coil system underneath the driveway in order to provide heat and melt the water that's over top. The other one would be to use running hot water pipes underneath in order to basically move hot water underneath, and that obviously radiates heat and melts off the snow and the ice that accumulates on the driveway. So what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of each of these two projects?
Typically what you find, the difference between electric heat and what would be like a hydraulic type of heat, like a water type system, is the electric heat coils, mats tend to be much cheaper product wise to purchase, install. So the upfront cost is much cheaper. However, as we're all aware, electricity isn't exactly cheap these days. So to run those systems can be quite costly depending on how bad of a winter we get.
Right.
The kind of opposite is true of the hydraulic systems, where it is a combination of essentially water and, for lack of a better term, antifreeze to keep the water from freezing. And it's a more expensive system to install.
Mm-hmm.
However, because it's run on essentially a boiler system that operates, which usually be on your gas system.
Right.
Gas is monumentally cheaper to run over the course of the winter. So to keep that system going in the long run is going to be a much cheaper cost.
Right. And also I assume the durability of the hydraulic system is probably greater than the coils. Like eventually the coils burn out and need to be replaced, do they not?
Well, not really, but I mean, I would say that any of these systems are typically embedded in concrete to protect them, and then what they're doing is warming the concrete has a great ability to hold heat. So once you get it warm, you're just kind of maintaining that warmth through the concrete, and then it radiates up. The electric ones, if you end up with, I guess if you have a damage in either one, it's hard to know where it is. But say you knew where the damage was because maybe somebody put a hole in the driveway for some reason. The water ones would be much easier, in my estimation, to repair. Mm-hmm. Because you can simply cut the water line, put a little piece in, and then fix it. Right. Electric ones can be temperamental. Trying to splice the wire back together so that it operates at the same efficiency level may not be possible, depending on the type of damage that is.
Right. That makes sense. Well, Adam, as you've probably noticed on our many chats on the subject, my dad and I are greatly interested in this subject, and I'm sure it will be of great interest to our listeners. So we just wanted to thank you for taking the time to come on our show today and provide us with such great insights. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, the best way to reach me would be by probably email or a phone call. Those are the best two ways. Letting me know, hey, this is where I saw you, and this is where so and so recommended me to you, and then I know exactly what you're here for.
Okay, sounds good. And are we okay to share that email with everybody?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, email would probably be the best way.
Perfect.
If I don't get back to you right away, feel free to bother me, because these days it's pretty busy, and getting timely response is one of the more difficult tasks I have right now.
That's fair. And that's Adam at 5bconstruction.com for all those who are interested. 5 at the letter B and then construction. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bill to wrap things up.
Bill, before you wrap it up, Bill, do we have time to show 2 or 3 quick pictures of Adam's work?
Well, sure.
Okay. Let's see if
on a primarily audio platform. Pictures are great.
Well, I know they.
For those who are only listening, we're going to swear to you these are absolutely phenomenal photographs.
Can you see?
Hey, look at that! It's even clean.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of quick pics. And
very nice.
Yeah.
Love that bathtub.
It's too bad you don't have the before ones, John.
I do have them, but we don't have time to get into it.
The before dates the bathroom.
Yes, big time.
Large portions of this house will betray its age if you walk around it. So it's getting there though.
I love that bathtub.
There's more work to be done.
Yep, we're still going.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, Bill.
I love the shower. That I think was my favorite piece in this whole bathroom. I've never put a shower in quite that large before.
Right.
And you guys have such beautiful water pressure that running all those systems at the same time is just like a monsoon in there. It's amazing.
That's great.
Very cool.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work, Adam. It's turned out beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Super. Well, as we wrap this up, all right, we know how to get hold of Adam. But guys, what if people are listening want to get a hold of you? How do they reach out and talk to you?
Absolutely. So if they want to reach out to us, they can visit our website. That's medwealth.ca, med-wealth.ca, or they can send us an email at info@medwealth.ca. If they go to the website, it also includes our information in terms of all of our phone numbers, both our local and toll-free number. And people can also follow us either individually or as a company on LinkedIn. And we're also on X at med-wealth.
Super. Thanks a lot, Alex. Appreciate it. John and Alex, always appreciate the conversations y'all facilitate and the places you take us to with them. Thank you very much. And listeners, thank you for your time. We appreciate you listening. If you are not a subscriber already, become one. It's really easy. Hit the subscribe button, and then you will never miss another episode of this fantastic podcast. On behalf of John and Alex and everybody at MedWealth, I'm Bill Tucker, reminding you to go out and live your best life and live it today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Prescribing Prosperity. Visit our website at med-wealth.ca. That's med-wealth.ca for more information or to connect with us for a consultation. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and their guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of IPC Securities Corporation. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified and licensed financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment or retirement planning. MedWealth Financial Services can provide a private consultation to help you determine the suitability of any guidance discussed on the show.